first arrived here, I was just given lists of names and addresses. Now, I actually don't mind lists of names and addresses. They're very good if you have 50 people in your church, because then you can go through them and you can tick them off and all the rest of it. But I suddenly realised as I read all these names and addresses that this church was scattered to the four winds almost. And really this last year or so, I've been talking to the deacons, talking to the staff, and we've been thinking, how do we get our heads and our hands around this great big thing that we call Glasgow Elim? And one of the things that Audrey and Stephen have been working on is just taking all our names and addresses, taking our database and dividing us up into postcode areas. I'm not exactly sure what the different postcodes are, but we've divided things up into, or organised things in terms of 10 areas. Now, this idea is still very much in its origins. I haven't got a lot of detail to give you, but this is just what we're thinking. We're thinking, number one, there's a huge spread. Geographically, this church covers a huge spread. The challenge for that is that traditionally, and in churches in smaller towns or even smaller cities, people are quite close to each other. So it's quite straightforward the way you do things. Is it getting a bit too heavy there, guys? Do you want to sit? You can sit there. Don't take longer than 3 minutes. So it just seemed like wisdom. It seemed like practical common sense to say, let's see where people are concentrated, and let's begin to think about how we might organise, how we might structure church a little bit differently. I think this has fantastic potential. Number one, from a pastoral perspective, it just helps us to see who's where, what's happening where, and to try to keep an eye on things. I mean, one of the things that leaders are is overseers, so it helps us to more effectively oversee what's going on. But I think it's also got it's got potential that goes way beyond that, and I think probably potential that I didn't quite see when I first began to think along these lines. One of the things that's happening in some churches in the UK and in other parts of the world is that they've gone from having church and cell groups or small groups or life groups as we call them, to having church plus life groups plus something called medium-sized groups, groups of maybe 30 to 50 people who perhaps don't meet every week, but meet on a more regular basis to do social things, fellowship things, even evangelistic things. And I think that there's that potential here. There are a couple of other things as well that I think this gives us great opportunity for. It gives us incredible opportunity to release loads of new gifts and to release people into leadership roles which aren't quite, having to pack up, go to Bible college and one day pastor a church, but are maybe a little bit more challenging than leading a life group. Another way that this fits in with what we've been thinking is we said to ourselves, at the moment we're a church of about 350 adults and 100 or 110 children and young people, and we thought we should really be preparing ourselves to be a church of about 500 adults. Actually, when William Lee came, I didn't admit to him that I was thinking that way, because it just seemed so puny compared to the things that he was talking about. But I really felt challenged. I really felt we should be preparing ourselves to be a church of 1,000 people. And the thing is, if you don't prepare for it, it doesn't happen. Or if it does happen, you're not ready for it. I'm not sure what's worse. I'm not sure whether it's worse that it didn't happen at all, or that God moved and it was in God's heart to do it, but you just weren't ready to contain what God was pouring out. So I think with this kind of structure, it just gives us the opportunity to grow in ways, not just to contain what God's doing, but actually to begin to take out into all these different areas what God's doing. You know, why not have alpha groups here and here and here, as well as just in Govan Hill? You know, there's a whole load of you could do alpha. Why not have healing meetings all over the region? You know, without me having to turn up at them. You know, there's some of you have the gifting to do that. And what if we started to pull all the different gifts together in those areas, and you had someone who was good at organising and booking halls, and someone who was really good at publicity, and someone who actually really loved just praying for the sick, and someone else who loved making coffee and hospitality and all that. You just don't work with that. This thing can take off. In St Andrew's, Chorleywood, they had a church of about 500 people. And please hear me, I'm not trying to set ourselves up for something here. God moves in different ways in different places, but this was their experience. They had a church of 500 people, and they had to refurb their building. And they decided that they needed to go and, you know, to break up into groups of about 50 and hire these different halls and just do things differently until their building got sorted out. But the thing was, during that time, the church trebled. Because gifts and ministry was being released into local areas. Now, I'm not standing here today saying that's what's going to happen to us. But that's some of the things that are happening. And I believe that in this, we've got the seeds of something here. You see, a church of 1,000 people doesn't have to be 1,000 people meeting all in the same building at one time. We could do multiple services here. That might be a way that we'll have to go. But let's think bigger than that. Let's think that we're not just a gathered church, but we're the church that's scattered out into our community. We're a church that's released into the greater Glasgow area to do the wonderful works of God and to tell of Jesus' amazing love. I just think there's so much potential in this. What if we really lived like one big extended family? One of the challenges that we have at the moment is, how do we get that sense of connection amongst people? And I think we're good. I think there's a lot of connection in this church. But as we grow, that will be a bigger and bigger challenge. And again, I think some of the thinking here actually facilitates that and helps us to grow big and to stay family at the same time, which is really what we want. And of course, it helps us to evangelize way beyond our own borders. So just when it comes to this, watch this space. As I say, it's just in the back of our minds. I'd rather tell you about it and talk to you about it now than it's sort of, you get wind of this, or, we start to prepare something and nobody really knows what's going on. This is what's in our minds. You'll be hearing more of it, and we'll probably be talking to more of you and asking you if you want to get involved in this. And I think there's incredible potential here to release gifting and to see God move, maybe in ways that we haven't seen him move before. Thanks, Carl. Thank you, brother.